I live alone in a low, one-story house that pretends not to make noises. That night the rain was steady, the kind that turns shingles into a drum and makes every wall sound older than it is. I was halfway through a reheated bowl of pasta and a dumb show when the ceiling over my bedroom gave a short, heavy thump. Not a creak, not pipes, a footfall, heel, then toe. I felt it in my scalp. I muted the TV. The silence made the rain louder. I waited for another step and got it, farther down, like whatever was up there was trying to be careful and failing. Most folks would say squirrels, raccoon, something that fits in your head. But the weight was wrong. It had intent. The hatch to the attic sits inside my hallway linen closet, a painted square with a finger ring. I went there with my cheap aluminum flashlight, trying to act like a person who does normal maintenance. When I opened the closet, the tiny details hit me first. The ring was turned sideways, not flat like I always leave it. A fresh arc in the dust showed where the panel had rubbed the frame recently. My mouth went dry fast. I dragged a step stool from the laundry nook, climbed up and put my ear to the wood. The roof hissed with rain. From the thin gap around the panel, a smell drifted down that didn't belong to insulation or lumber. Old sweat, damp fabric, and something sour like breath trapped in a hood. I said, "Hello?" because fear makes you say dumb things out loud. My voice bounced wrong in the closet. It sounded like a stranger's. I pushed the panel up an inch, slid it aside, and raised the light. Dust motes turned in the beam like snow. Trusses, wires, that wide crawl space that runs over the bedrooms, barely tall enough for a kid to kneel in. I kept the light slow so I didn't spook myself on a shadow. In the far corner, behind a truss, the beam caught a small, wrong scene. A flattened patch of insulation like a nest, a plastic water bottle with the label peeled off, a granola wrapper pressed into the fluff as if a knee had pinned it there. Fresh, not a contractor's garbage. New fingerprints smeared the bottle's side in dull black. The feeling you get when a place stops being yours starts in the ribs. I lowered the panel back into place, careful, like noise would make teeth show up. I checked every lock in the house, all good. Every window latched, back door bar in place. I told myself a story about a raccoon with expensive taste and opposable thumbs. I tried to watch TV. It sat there moving its mouth without saying anything. Finally, I gave up and took the flashlight to bed. I locked my bedroom door for the first time since moving in and left the light on the comforter like a paperweight. Sometime deep into the night, I snapped awake with the sure feeling that I was being watched. No nightmare, no sound, just that prickly alertness that makes you smaller under a blanket. The rain had softened to a whisper. The ceiling over my bed sighed. Not a step, a careful drag, like a knee shifting on cardboard. It came from the same spot where the truss crosses the ceiling light. I did not move. I counted breaths I didn't want to take. That's when the click came. Quiet, crisp, mechanical. A phone camera, a shutter in the wrong place, a single polite capture from the dark above me. That's when the click came. Quiet, crisp, mechanical. A phone camera, a shutter in the wrong place, a single polite capture from the dark above me. It is very hard to convince yourself you imagined a sound that exact. I stared at the light fixture until my eyes watered. I told myself if I got up, the bed would squeak and give the whole show away. I lay there and tried to make the beeping in my ears be just blood. Minutes moved like old syrup. The house pretended to settle. Eventually, the rain reassured me I was still on Earth. When sleep finally took me, it felt like dropping through ice. I woke to gray light. The flashlight had slid to the floor. My mouth tasted like pennies and dust. I got up slow, every joint voting against the plan in my head. Coffee helped my hands hold still long enough to carry the step stool back to the closet. This time I wore gloves and a dust mask because pretending to be careful is a way to feel brave. I lifted the hatch, slid it aside, and pushed my shoulders through. The attic air had a body to it, wet heat and ammonia, and the stale bite of a person's breath. The light crawled across the trusses and landed on the flattened insulation again. More details appeared that I hadn't seen last night. A cheap fleece blanket shoved into a corner, 2 empty bottles lined like a habit, a half roll of paper towels grimed with black fingerprints, A rectangle of broken-down cardboard laid out like stepping stones between joists, each square stamped with oval knee prints, dark with oil. I should have stopped. I didn't. I crawled. Elbows and knees, hips complaining. By a metal duct that snakes over the hallway, I saw a tiny circle sliced into the tape in a clean dime-sized hole. From below, it would just look like an old seam. From up here, you could picture an eye pressed to it. The aluminum around the cut carried fingertip smudges. I felt my stomach try to unhook itself. Backing out, I bumped a truss and showered my hair with gray dust. I dropped to the floor and set the panel back harder than I meant to. The house swallowed the thump and gave nothing back. I taped a thin strip of clear tape across the edge of the hatch inside the closet so I'd know if it moved. I put a dining chair under the hatch. I left a second chair nearby. I was not done making myself feel like I had a plan. I called the non-emergency line because part of me still needed a grown-up to say, "It's mice." A patrol car came an hour later. The officer was calm in a way that suggests he's seen worse. He climbed up, took phone pictures, said the obvious. Somebody had been staying up there. He checked my doors and windows again. No pry marks, no torn screens. He pointed at the old oak that leans over the roofline. If a person wanted a quiet way up, he let the sentence die. He told me to stay elsewhere for a night or two, get motion lights, cut the branch. He filed the report and left me on my porch with a card and the feeling of a borrowed house key in my pocket that wasn't worth anything. I tried the motel idea, packed a bag, drove out, sat on a bed that hummed with someone else's air conditioner and watched my hands not hold still. After 30 minutes of staring at a beige wall, I drove back. Cowardice or stupidity, I don't know. I told myself I forgot something important. Truth is, I wanted my walls around me even if they were lying. I set up in the hallway like a person camping wrong. Blanket on the floor. Back to the wall across from the closet. Hammer on my lap because a hammer is honest. Phone on silent. I left the house dark, like I was pretending to be asleep for someone. The rain thickened again and became a roof-wide whisper. Around the time your neck starts to ache from staying brave, I dozed. The hammer slipped, tapped my shin, and I jerked awake with a breath I didn't mean to take. The clear tape on the hatch looked fine. The ring lay flat. I told my heart to quit it. Then I noticed the paint around the ring had a new crescent in the dust, a shine where a fingertip had gently tested the panel's give, and then put it back down exactly where it had been. The tape was still intact. The panel had still been touched. I stood up, knees crackling, and edged to the closet. Ear to wood. The panel made the softest sound, skin on paint like a palm exploring. I stepped back, every part of me trying to be quiet. A narrow strip of paper slid under the closet door and brushed my bare toes. I didn't pick it up right away. I crouched and tilted my phone to throw light without letting it shine up into the crack. It was a glossy photo, square, with my room's ceiling lamp in the top corner and my face below it. I was asleep on my side, mouth open, flashlight on my chest like a pet. The angle was high, attic high. The kind of angle you get when you press a lens to a dime-sized hole and wait for breathing to go slow. "I'm calling the police," I said. Not loud, not tough. My voice had the sound people make when they discover they're the only adult in the room and there's still no one to help. Behind the door, the wood breathed. The panel didn't move. The house listened with me. The rain played dumb, and the only thing that moved was the little square in my hand, soft with fingerprints that were not mine. I didn't wait to see if another note would come under the closet door. I went straight for the front window and dialed. My voice did that thin, polite thing fear makes it do. The dispatcher said to stay outside if I could. I stood on the porch under the rain eaves, bare feet on cold concrete, phone against my cheek, photo slick in my hand. The officer who showed last time returned with a partner. Their boots thumped through my hallway, up the step stool into the hole above my ceiling. I stayed in the doorway and watched gray dust drift down, fat as snowflakes. "Somebody's been nesting," one of them called, like he was talking about a bird. The other climbed down with a bottle pinched between two gloved fingers. "Fresh," he said. He pointed with his chin toward the oak leaning over the roof. "You should cut that." They were professional, quick, and careful in the way people are when they already know what they're looking at. No forced cheer, no spooky talk. They took the printed photo from me and slid it in a bag. They checked each window latch again and shook every exterior door. No pry marks, no scratches. "We'll increase patrols," the second officer said, and his voice meant, "We know this could get weird." He told me to go stay with a friend. I nodded and lied that I would. When they left, the rain slackened to a steady hiss that made every room sound farther away. I changed the locks because I needed to do something with my hands. New deadbolts, new strike plates. I printed my own little labels and stuck them on the backs of the keys like a person playing house. I texted the only neighbor whose name I knew and got back a thumbs up and a "be safe." Then I did the thing I swore I wouldn't do. I stayed. The house had rules now. Closet door shut. Dining chair under the hatch. Second chair beside it. Clear tape across the panel edge inside the closet, aligned with a pencil line so I'd see even a hair's change. Motion light facing the hallway like a stage wash. Phone on silent with the camera aimed at the closet door recording. Hammer on my lap because it's simple and it weighs what it weighs. The day dragged its shadows thin. Late afternoon, I walked room to room and tried to figure out how a person gets in and out without leaving a scratch. That's when I saw it. The toothpaste on the wrong side of the sink again. Not a big deal. Small enough to make your stomach go cold. I lined it up with a chip in the porcelain, snapped a photo, and put the tube cap touching the tile seam. If it moved, I'd know. In the kitchen, I counted knives and laughed at myself because the numbers were the same, but still felt wrong. In the living room, the curtain I keep exactly 2 finger widths off the sill hung a little lower on one side. I fixed it and hated that I'd noticed. At dusk, I found another thing I shouldn't have missed. A coil of coaxial cable at the side of the house where the old dish used to be. The end had a strip of cloth tape around it like a handle. If you climbed the oak, stepped onto the shallow porch roof, then to the eave, you could pull that cable and open the vent cap near the soffit without putting weight where someone inside could hear. I pictured a careful person rehearsing it, one slow night at a time. I took a box cutter and sliced the cable off at the wall. The act felt like telling a story to myself where I'm the main character again. I swept the porch as if footprints there would matter in the morning. I laid down a line of table salt across the inside edge of the front door because I am not superstitious and did it anyway. I put a glass on the kitchen counter exactly at the corner, lip touching the grout seam, a tiny alarm only I would notice. By full dark, the house had stopped pretending it didn't have a second set of lungs. The ceiling breathed with the change in air pressure. The fridge tried to start and failed. The rain wasn't rain anymore. It was soft beads falling off leaves. I sat on the hallway floor with my back against the wall and let every sound teach me its shape. The motion light washed the closet door in weak white. The tape line on the hatch glowed like a thin vein. I didn't mean to sleep. I did. I woke with my neck locked and the hammer crooked against my shin. The house was black behind the washed rectangle of the light. The air had cooled the way it does right before dawn, except the clock on the stove blinked and lied about the time. I checked the phone, a little after 2. In the bathroom, the tube of toothpaste had shifted sideways by a finger's width. The photo I took earlier said so. Not much. Enough. Back in the hallway, I stared at the hatch until my eyes watered. The tape was intact. The ring lay flat. I pressed my ear to the closet door. From the other side, something brushed the panel. Not weight. Skin on paint again. Slow. Testing. My mouth filled with that dry coin taste. I rolled the chair under me, stood on it, and slid the closet door open an inch. The gap let out attic air that hit my face cold and sour. I waited. Nothing moved. I widened the crack another inch. The hatch ring stayed still. The tape line was clean. I lifted my phone to get the lens through for a shot, and the screen showed a reflection in the tiny brass ring. A distorted oval that wasn't mine at first glance because fear makes your own face look like a stranger's. I closed the door and climbed down because my legs decided this for me. I sat on the floor and tried to make my heart behave like a quiet thing. The house did that slow shrink old houses do about this hour. Wood relaxing, pipes clicking cool. At some point, the refrigerator shuddered back to life and sounded like a truck idling in the living room. That's when I heard a soft plastic crunch from the kitchen, a sound like a wrapper being pinched between finger and thumb. I walked toward it because sometimes your body moves forward without asking your head. The motion light didn't reach the kitchen, so the room was a gray box. The glass on the counter sat 2 inches from the corner now, the circle it left on the tile wet and round. Next to it, a protein bar wrapper lay folded twice, set down too neatly to be an accident. It wasn't mine. It matched the brand in the nest above my ceiling. My throat made a dry sound that tried to be a laugh and wasn't. I backed into the hallway, hammer up without meaning to lift it, eyes on the dark square that is the closet door. The motion light blinked once, caught dust floating, and steadied. The tape line on the hatch still shone unbroken. A breath later, the ring turned a fraction, not up, not down, sideways, a lover's touch. Paint whispered. Dust fell. The panel rose the thickness of 2 coins and held there, a black seam opening where my ceiling should be sealed. I stepped onto the chair. The hammer handle went slick in my palm. My mouth said words I don't remember. The panel lifted another hair, enough for fingers to slide into the gap. They didn't. They hovered, silhouette thin behind the seam, waiting to see if I'd blink. From the dark above the door, a voice shaped a single word into the wood. Not loud, not angry. Patient. Quiet. The panel flexed like a held breath. The tape did not break. Something thin and sharp slid between wood and frame with a dry scratch, like a flathead shaved to a pick. The attic began to open, and in the weak light, I finally saw what I'd been trying not to see since the first click. The outline of a face poised over the gap, the eye not blinking, the pupil too steady, watching my hands as if it had watched them 100 times. When the panel lifted, I jammed the hammer into the seam and yelled. From the dark above the door, he exhaled in my face and said it again, soft, patient, quiet. The hatch flexed against the hammer handle like a jaw biting down. Dust came off the paint in a gray sheet and salted my eyelashes. I braced my shoulder into the panel and felt the bones in it complain. He pushed once, testing. Not a slam. A slow, steady pressure, the kind a person uses when they already know what wood can take. The clear tape held. The seam widened the thickness of 2 coins. On the other side, something thin slid along the frame, a shaved flathead most likely, looking for the spot where the wood was tired. "I'm calling the police," I said, louder this time, not because I thought the promise would scare him, but because I needed my own voice in the room. I did the only smart thing all night and actually dialed. The operator told me to keep the door closed, keep pressure on the panel, stay on the line. I wedged my knee against the chair for leverage and pushed up. The hammer handle groaned. The panel squealed. Above me, the breathing changed. Not faster. Closer. He tried a different angle. The tool scratched down the jamb and found soft pine. The seam jumped. The panel lifted another hair. The word came through the wood a 3rd time. No irritation, no panic, like a command he had practiced. Quiet. I pictured the truss span, the nails, the shallow crawl. I pictured a thin man crouched above my head, face over the gap, feeling the heat from my hands through the wood. A stupid thought crossed my mind. What if I let go and let him fall, and vanished? I held. I said the address to the dispatcher 3 times because my throat kept trying to close around the street name. Somewhere in the distance, a siren pulled itself awake. He felt it too. The pressure went sharp for 1 second, a last push, enough to make the hammer bite my palm. Then he let go so fast the panel snapped back and slapped the frame. Silence thumped down after it, thick and live. In that silence, I could hear the smallest sounds, the rain beating off leaves, the refrigerator motor starting its next brave try, the dry slide of knees on cardboard as he crawled backward, away from the hatch, toward the vent run that overlooks my hallway. I kept my shoulder in the panel until the front door shook with knuckles and someone yelled, "Police!" I crabbed down, legs rubber, and fumbled the deadbolt. 3 officers shouldered past me with lights and firm voices. One planted a forearm on the panel and another popped it with a flat bar. The square of dark opened like a mouth. Two bodies went up with beams knifing across trusses, boots dented insulation. A voice from the attic, "Let me see your hands." And then wood banged, something skittered, something else cursed. 10 slow seconds later, we got him. They brought him down through the closet, knees dusty, cuffs already on. Thin. Late 20s maybe, but his skin didn't care what number you guessed. Hoodie sleeves rubbed shiny, nails chewed to wedges. He blinked like the light hurt. He kept his eyes off mine until the very end. When he looked, it wasn't angry or wild. It was measuring. He filed me someplace and didn't bother to write a label. They sat him on the hallway floor and did the pat-down that looks like a chore until it produces a thing you've been afraid of. From his kangaroo pocket, they pulled a box cutter. From the waistband, a flathead screwdriver shaved to a point. From the hoodie pouch, a roll of duct tape mashed to a gray pancake. From the back pocket, a key ring with a yellow plastic smiley face. 3 keys. One of them was the exact model and cut of my old front door deadbolt. My stomach went cold and stayed there. "How did you get that?" He looked past me. The corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile. "She said this house would be empty." "Who?" I asked, too fast. He shut down like a switch, jaw locked, eyes soft as a dead screen. He didn't say another name. Up in the nest, the officers found a torn backpack with more of the same. Folded wrapper twins to the one on my counter. 2 empty bottles lined on their sides like a bedtime habit. A cheap burner phone with a cracked corner, and a camera roll full of my life from the wrong angle. Shots through that dime hole in the duct tape, me brushing my teeth, the crown of my head on the couch, my bedroom light fixture, my throat from above when I tilted my head to gulp water. There were also shots the police wouldn't let me see, and I am grateful for that mercy even as my brain keeps trying to develop them for me in the dark. They took him. They bagged. They logged. The officer I'd met twice already stood with me in the kitchen while the rain went from steady to fine and the house settled around us like old lungs. "We'll get him on burglary, trespass, tools," he said. "Maybe stalking, depending on what's on that phone and what the DA can prove." He flipped his notebook. "Any idea who she is?" A short list bloomed and made me feel sick. The landlord's niece who stopped by to measure blinds. The cable guy who couldn't find the drop. The friend of a friend who helped me move a dresser and asked too many questions about locks. I shook my head and watched my hands pretend to be calm on the edge of the counter. "Change the locks again," he said. "Cut the tree. Seal that vent cap. Motion lights everywhere. Cameras if you can." He tapped his card against the tile. "Call if you see anything, even if you think it's nothing." I did all of it in the next 48 hours. New deadbolts with longer screws and reinforced plates. Tree crew took the overhanging limbs back to the trunk. I sealed the soffit vent with a galvanized hood and hardware cloth, then taped seams like a cautious HVAC tech. I vacuumed the attic in a paper suit until sweat ran down my back, bagged up the nest, scrubbed the joists with a cleaner that promised to kill what I could smell. I did all of it in the next 48 hours. New deadbolts with longer screws and reinforced plates. Tree crew took the overhanging limbs back to the trunk. I sealed the soffit vent with a galvanized hood and hardware cloth, then taped seams like a cautious HVAC tech. I vacuumed the attic in a paper suit until sweat ran down my back, bagged up the nest, scrubbed the joists with a cleaner that promised to kill what I could smell. Sleep came like a hit to the head, sudden and not restful. In it, the panel always lifted on its own, a polite inch, and a voice I cannot pin to any face whispered that same word in the calm tone of someone who has time. I woke with my jaw sore from clenching and a half-moon of plaster dust stuck at the edge of my mouth. The DA kept me out of the rest. They told me his name, or a name. They told me he wouldn't talk. They said he had nothing in the system except a petty theft 2 towns over and a failure to appear. He pled to what they could prove. He went where people go when they can't be trusted with other people's ceilings. For a week, the house made the sounds of a house, and I learned which ones meant nothing again. On day 9, a roofing crew replacing a section over the guest room called down that I should see something. I climbed the ladder and peered into a corner above the far joist where the wood ran darker from old leaks. There, beneath a thin layer of dust we'd missed, was another flattened spot. Smaller, older, no bottles, no blanket, just the ghost of weight and insulation and a rusted hair clip pressed into the paper. Too small for the man we caught, too old to be his. The roofer shrugged like old houses have old stories. He went back to work. I went back down holding a hair clip I did not want. The new locks clicked reassuringly every night. The motion lights learned the shape of my steps. The cameras emailed me their clean, boring midnight reports. The house tried to become mine again, inch by inch, like a book you reread to remember where you were. The new locks clicked reassuringly every night. The motion lights learned the shape of my steps. The cameras emailed me their clean, boring midnight reports. The house tried to become mine again, inch by inch, like a book you reread to remember where you were. On a Tuesday, an envelope with no return address showed up in my mailbox. No stamp smudge, no machine cancel, like someone walked it over. Inside, a single glossy print. My hallway. My dining chair under the hatch. Me on the floor with a hammer on my lap, eyes closed, mouth slack. The angle was not attic high, it was doorway high. A yellow plastic smiley face key tag lay on the floor just inside the frame, as if it had been slid under and pushed with a fingertip. On the back of the photo, block letters written with a dull marker, "Quiet." I called. I handed it over. They dusted the page and the key tag and told me what they tell everybody when evidence is thin. I changed the locks again anyway. I pulled the cameras down and put better ones up. I tried to be a person who laughs at squeaks. Most nights now, the house minds its own business. When rain hits right, the roof drums and I can feel the ceiling flex the way wood does when air changes underneath it. Even when there's nothing up there but truss and insulation and the dim chemical smell of new paint. And every so often, when I pass the linen closet without meaning to look, my eyes check the paint around the hatch for a fresh crescent shine that says a fingertip tested the gap. So far, clean. So far, mine. Last week, the tree crew foreman knocked to say the oak will throw a new branch over the eave by the end of summer if I don't keep at it. He looked up at the roofline and said it the way people say weather. That night, near midnight, a small sound woke me. Not a step. A soft plastic crunch from the kitchen, like a wrapper being pinched between finger and thumb. I went in slow, hand on the wall. The glass I keep at the counter's corner was still there, circle mark wet beneath it. In the hallway, the camera's tiny status light blinked, steady, then off, then steady again, like a breath. And from the guest room, where the roofing guys had pulled off rod and put down new felt, the ceiling answered the house with a sound I can only describe as weight adjusting. One gentle shift. Then stillness. Then, somewhere outside on the porch, a polite single knock like a test.